This is the crazy story of where the term Stockholm Syndrome came from. In Stockholm in 1973, an escaped convict walks into a bank and holds 4 bank workers hostage. Escaped convict Jan Erik Olsson also wounds a policeman who responded to a silent alarm, and snipers quickly surround the building. The criminal made several demands, including a car and also the arrival of a fellow convict. The police actually fulfilled his wishes, apart from one. He wanted to leave and take his hostages with him. The 2 criminals and the bank worker remain locked in a vault. Inside the vault, something really weird was happening. The bank workers were forming a really bizarre bond with the captors and actually started fearing the police more than their own abductors. They even stayed loyal when they were being threatened with physical harm. One of the criminals wanted to shoot one of the bank workers in the leg to get a reaction from the police. Upon hearing this, one of the bank workers actually claimed that they thought it was so kind that they only wanted to injure them in the leg. In another bizarre twist, the hostages even offered to act as human shields to prevent their captors getting injured. When police eventually pumped tear gas into the building to force them out, the captors even begged police not to hurt their abductors. Finally, when the criminals were sent back to prison, the hostages even went to visit them.
This is the case that taught me that some fates are worse than death. Blanche Monnier was born in France on March 1st, 1849, into a very bourgeoisie family. She grew into a socialite and was sought after by many suitors, as she was very well known for her stunning good looks. When she was 25 years old, she fell in love with an older lawyer, but her mother refused to let her marry a penniless lawyer and did everything in her power to end the relationship. Blanche could not be swayed despite her mother's best efforts, and one day the beautiful young girl simply vanished. Her mother and brother publicly mourned her loss and told everyone they thought she'd just run away. And then one day in 1901, 25 years after she disappeared, the Attorney General of Paris received an anonymous note. The note read, quote, "Monsieur Attorney General, I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. I speak of a spinster who is locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living on putrid litter for the past 25 years, in a word, in her own filth." Luckily, the police took the note seriously, went to the home to investigate, and initially Blanche's mother wouldn't let them in the home, but they forced their way through and into the house. On the second floor of the home, they found a, quote, "tiny, dark, foul-smelling room," and when they pried open the windows, they were horrified by what they saw. Blanche was on a bed in the room, covered in her own filth, quote, "a gaunt creature with abundant black hair hiding her body." Blanche had shrunk to just over 50 pounds and was, quote, "covered in food and her own filth, with bugs all around the bed and the floor." She had been locked in that room for 25 years without sunlight or human interaction, was clearly underfed, and barely looked human. Quote, "Blanche seemed like a scared animal when the officers took her out of there." One officer said, quote, "The unfortunate woman was lying without clothes on a rotten straw mattress. All around her was formed a sort of crust made from her own filth, fragments of meat, vegetables, fish, and rotten bread. We also saw oyster shells and bugs running across Mademoiselle Monnier's bed. The air was so unbreathable, the odor given off by the room was so rank that it was impossible for us to stay any longer to proceed with our investigation." The New York Times reported, quote, "Time passed and Blanche was no longer young. The attorney she so loved died in 1885. During all that time, the girl was confined to the lonely room, fed with scraps from her mother's table when she received any food at all. Not a ray of light penetrated her dungeon, and what she suffered can only be surmised." Blanche's brother was sentenced to 15 months for his role in the crime, but was later released because he never physically restricted her movements in any way. Blanche's mother was arrested but passed away in prison just 15 days later. Blanche was too far gone to return to society, so she was committed to a mental hospital where she passed away just 12 years later.
This man shot his son's abuser in the head live on national TV. Here is the shocking true crime story of Gary Plauché. In 1983, Gary and June Plauché were going through a divorce. To take their 10-year-old son Jody's mind off it, they decided to get him into karate. Jeff Doucette was the local karate teacher who taught Jody, and he quickly hit it off with Gary and they became friends, and Jeff would often visit Gary and Jody in their home. At first, Jody was thriving in karate, winning tournaments, and this was the perfect distraction from his parents' ongoing divorce. Little did Gary know that Jeff was slowly grooming Jody one touch at a time over the course of several months. After a long period of time, Jeff had established himself as being very close to the family, spending a lot of time with them. So, on February 19th, 1984, Jody's parents didn't see any issue with letting Jeff take Jody back to his home so he could check out the brand new carpet he was getting fitted. Once nighttime arrived, Gary and June were unable to get hold of Jeff, so they began to panic, contact friends and family in regards to where Jeff and Jody could be, but they had completely vanished. After a week went by, Gary and June got a phone call from Jody, who told them they were just in a hotel room near Disneyland, and then Jeff himself jumped on the call and insisted that they bring the whole family to meet them as if nothing had happened, but sadly this wasn't the case. The truth was that he had done unspeakable things to Jody during their time in that hotel room. Thankfully, the FBI were tracking the parents' calls, so when Jeff got in touch, they managed to track down Jeff and Jody not long after that call, and Jeff was swiftly arrested. Understandably, Gary was devastated that he had allowed this to happen to his son. Drowning his sorrows, he was drinking at a bar one night when he struck up a conversation with an executive from a local news station, who accidentally let slip that police were flying Jeff into Baton Rouge that evening at 9:08 p.m. That was all Jeff needed to hear, and he instantly knew what he had to do. He went straight to the airport, and when Jeff's flight landed, he called a friend to say, "Here he comes, you're about to hear a shot." As you can see, Jeff has been escorted by police through the airport when they begin to pass the payphone, and you can see Jeff in the background in disguise. Nobody had noticed him, nor did they notice him pull out his gun, and within a second, he shot Jeff in the head, live on TV, and he instantly dropped to the ground. The first officer to grab Gary was a friend who can be heard yelling, "Why, Gary, why?" And he replied, "If somebody did it to your kid, you would do it too." In the end, thanks to the strong support of the nation, Gary only spent a few years behind bars before being freed and dying peacefully in 2014. Like and follow for more.
This was one of the craziest murders in Canada, local. This happened in, I think, 2008. Okay. So there's this guy named Tim McLean, right? He was headed home after work. So he hopped on a coach bus. Okay. And he was driving, and they made a stop, and this guy named Vincent hopped on the bus, right? Okay. So everything was chill. Vincent ended up sitting right beside Tim. Okay. Tim fell asleep on the bus ride, and out of nowhere, Vincent reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a big kitchen knife, right? And he starts him in his sleep.
In the bus?
Yeah, in the bus.
With people on it?
With all the people on it, right? Happens is the bus driver freaks out. Yeah. He pulls over, lets all of the passengers out, right? Okay. Now he goes and looks to the back, and he sees
I'm in the river and I'm having a bounce. Let's just let her go. Oh my god, wait, actually no.